Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. In that case, how many gods were still alive in the world? Why did these gods abandon their corporeal bodies and enter Fengdu? Where are their corporeal bodies at? Wait a minute. Qin Mu's mind was blown as qi and blood rushed into his brain, causing his ears to ring. There were many gods in his world. It was just that they had already become stone statues. They were the stone statues protecting the people in great ruins. Didn't this mean that they could revive any time and become gods? This guess was shocking. All kinds of strange incidents in great ruins had troubled Qin Mu for a long time, but if his guess was correct, he could explain part of the strangeness. For example, the incident at Heavenly King Temple in which the Heavenly King's stone statue had ridden the dragon Qilin to slay the Dragon King at night. For example, the incident of the white-back god statues reviving. And for example, when he and village chief roamed the night of great ruins and saw the battle between gods and devils. Of course, there were still numerous unexplainable things. In the incident of slaying the Dragon King, the Heavenly King of Heavenly King Temple had gone on the order of founding emperor to slay the Dragon King that had rebelled. Where had this order of founding emperor come from? In the incident of white-back god statues, why was there a god that looked like an overlord body petrified in the depths of Ghost Valley? Why was there a passage to Yudu there? During the battle between the gods and devils, who was the one fighting with the gods of great ruins? On top of that, the primordial spirits of Fengdu's gods also couldn't explain the sight of the 5 worlds overlapping at the source of Surging River. They also couldn't begin to explain how Qin Mu had returned to the ancient times. The strange sights in great ruins are just like the sea of fog. After pushing the fog away, there is more fog, making it hard to see the real thing, Qin Mu thought. They came to a very wide river in the city. There was a flying bridge that connected the two shores. Qin Mu went to the railing to look down, but he only saw dense fog churning instead of water. Once in a while, he could see slimy bodies slithering within it. Is this place connected to the sea of fog? He inquired. No. The other end of the dense fog is Yudu. Those things are life forms of Yudu, bird-headed god Kai Xiu said. Life forms of Yudu. Qin Mu's mind was muddle-headed. He muttered, Fengdu and Yudu are connected? Won't Yudu attack this place? God Kai Xiu didn't explain. He led them across the bridge of helplessness and came to a sacred hall. It was called Hall of King Qin. When Qin Mu saw the 3 words on the horizontally inscribed board, he couldn't help being stunned. Why is this sacred hall called Hall of King Qin? Could the hall master's surname be Qin? He was puzzled, but the bird-headed god escorted them into the hall. At that moment, the hall was brightly lit, yet the light gave a feeling of a void. It was as if it wasn't truly fire. Its light was also hazy. On both sides of the hall, there were awe-inspiring and solemn sculptures of ghost gods. They were tall and had queer appearances, their body parts different from those of ordinary people. With sashes around their bodies, they held all kinds of weapons in their hands, like knives, spears, swords, halberds, shields, tokens, and even huge snakes. Qin Mu stopped in front of one sculpture to examine it, wanting to study the rune markings on its body. But suddenly, the eyeballs of the ghost god sculpture rolled and looked at him curiously. Qin Mu jumped in shock and hurriedly took a step back. The eyeballs of the ghost god sculpture looked forward again then, making him think that he'd been seeing things. These are not sculptures, but real ghost gods. Qin Mu instantly became well-behaved and went after God Kai Xiu. In the main hall, a god cloaked in black sat upright and still, busy reading through memorials. God Kai Xiu bowed and said, King Yama, convicts Qin Mu, Xing'an, and Shaman God Kuei have been captured. Awaiting your orders. The black-robed god placed the cinnabar brush in his hand down and raised his head. His face under the black robe couldn't be seen clearly. Only 2 dim lights could be seen. Xing'an's predestined lifespan is yet to end, and he's not under the jurisdiction of my Fengdu, so let him go. God Kai Xiu was slightly stunned, but he still followed the orders and let Xing'an go. Xing'an, even though you have done much evil, Fengdu doesn't deal with people who are yet to die, King Yama said. You can leave. Xing'an was surprised but delighted. He sneered and said, so Fengdu is still a reasonable place. Very good, farewell. He was about to move, but the other 20 to 30 bodies on him weren't willing. They made him unable to take a step. Xing'an was astonished and angry. Those bodies were struggling, screaming and cursing, wanting to repay him with kind. How can Hall of King Qin tolerate such clamor? King Yama's voice turned unpleasant. Throw him out. Suddenly, two of the ghost god sculptures moved. The two ghost gods held military forks with which they stabbed Xing'an and threw him out of the hall. Didn't you say you will let me leave? Why are you still keeping me in Fengdu? Xing'an asked angrily. God Kaixio sneered. How can you blame others if you can't walk out yourself? Ignorant. King Yama then looked at Shaman God Kuei, who was not frightened at all. He sneered and said, my predestined lifespan isn't over as well. Old man Qin, shouldn't you let me go as well? Old man Qin. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently. King Yama's surname is also Qin? Who is he exactly? Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Hall of Wen Yuan was young patriarch's place, and it was much shabbier than the halls of the cult masters. This was probably because patriarch had never been a cult master before, and his status was much lower than that of the cult masters. However, in Qin Mu's eyes, it was also because the young patriarch had never been the cult master sacred teacher that he could drop the baggage and achieve things that those cult masters had never done. The young patriarch and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were half teacher and student and half friends. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor came to visit him, he took the initiative to show him great educational heavenly devil scriptures and also told him about the general teachings of the path of the saint. He then personally wrote a letter to recommend that young man to Dao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's huge achievements were related to him by a lot too. Afterward, when Eternal Peace started his reform, it was also related to the young patriarch. Even the founding of Imperial College also had very deep relations with him. He was the first Grand Chancellor of Imperial College, and when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor carried out his reform, he would frequently seek his opinion. Eternal Peace had three big players in the reform. The two big players, Imperial Preceptor and Emperor, were out in the open while the young patriarch was the third big player hidden behind their backs. Just based on achievements, in the entire history of the sacred cult, there was at most 2-3 other people who could match up to the achievements of the young patriarch. Yet because he wasn't the cult master, he didn't receive the treatment of the other cult masters, and this made Qin Mu felt grief for him. You still haven't changed your temper. The young patriarch brought Qin Mu into the hall while the huge bones and scales of a dragon Chelin kept rubbing against him. It was to the point that the young patriarch's clothes were already torn and his leg had turned bright red. Yet he acted like it was nothing and said to Qin Mu, "What now? All the past cult masters have been beaten up by you. Do you think they are easy to get along with? They are a force in Fengdu. After you die of old age, how are you going to stand in Fengdu?" Patriarch Qin Mu suddenly hugged him tightly as his voice shook slightly. He didn't let him go even after a long time. "I missed you." The skeleton boy wanted to wipe his tears, but there were no tears to be wiped. He choked as he said, "I didn't know you were blocking off the gods of high heavens in great ruins and only heard about it later from Sai Yunxiang. Elder of Discipline brought your ashes back, but I wasn't able to meet you one last time. So I'm here to see you now. I kept hiding it from Fatty Dragon, not daring to tell him, but I couldn't any longer." The young patriarch was stunned. He patted the youth's back and sighed ruefully. "I'm only living elsewhere. Look, I still have flesh and blood. In my eyes, you guys are the dead ones, so should I cry miserably too?" There. Cult Master Qin was so fierce when scolding and beating up all the ancestors, so why are you acting like a small child now? Enough, Dragon Chelin, my leg is bleeding from your rubs. Haven't you rubbed enough? The dragon Qin wanted to stick his tongue out to help him lick his injury, but he then remembered that he had no tongue. He then reluctantly retreated. But after a moment, he couldn't resist coming up to rub himself against the leg again. The young patriarch was speechless. He had not met the dragon Qin for a long time, so when they first met, they even cried a whole lot because they had been close before. But as that fatty dragon kept rubbing against his leg, he was starting to get really annoyed. In a moment, there was nothing he wanted more than to send that fellow far away. I've thought about meeting Saint Woodcutter, who had imparted his teachings on the rock and also founding master, as well as the three kings, Qin Mu said. Patriarch, are they also in Fengdu? You can't see the three sacred kings anymore, their souls have dispersed, the young patriarch said sorrowfully. They died in battle while forcing themselves to impart the teachings on the rock to the next cult master, so they couldn't protect their own souls and enter Fengdu. I thought I would meet founding master here as well, but I've not seen him. Saint Woodcutter is not here too. Qin Mu was stunned. Besides Fengdu, where else could Saint Woodcutter and founding master have gone? The stone statue of Woodcutter's corporeal body still stood in Little Jade Capital, looking toward great ruins. His primordial spirit had left his body and went to other places. After founding master established his cult and set his ideas in writing, he had not established merit, so he still wasn't a saint. He shouldn't have been a god as well, so he would have died of old age. Where could he have gone then? The young patriarch hesitated and said, You beat up the past cult masters. Patriarch, I'm a cult master, and they are also cult masters, so why should I be lower than them? I'm still a human emperor too, so my status is even above theirs. If you want me to talk to them nicely, I can't do it, Qin Mu said. The sacred cult has no seniority, and the one who discovers the truth should be the teacher. Even though they are the past cult masters, they also have their own strength of character. If I didn't beat them, they would say that my cult master title was not attained properly. After beating them, they were speechless. Besides, the sacred cult in their hands had no achievements and their way is corrupted, so they deserved to be beaten. The young patriarch sighed and asked curiously, You don't have your corporeal body, so how did you use your magic power? I've come here once with village chief, and it was then that I realized that me turning into a skeleton was merely an illusion. Since it was an illusion, my corporeal body disappearing and you guys coming back to life is also an illusion. Grandpa Blind's divine eyes allowed me to see through everything in Fengdu, and it was from then on that I could use magic power and divine arts in Fengdu. I can sense my own corporeal body. Patriarch, you don't know this, but in my eyes. Boundless sorrow flooded his heart, and he didn't continue to speak. In front of his divine eyes, Patriarch, who was living perfectly fine, was only a skeleton. When Qin Mu walked in Fengdu city, that was all he saw. Everyone walking to and fro in the bustling city of Fengdu were all skeletons and ghosts. Only he was moving through the city with a corporeal body. He was a lonely soul, isolated and alone. Even when he talked cheerfully with the past human emperors in Sacred Hall of Five Yang, he had only been talking with dozens of skeletons. Only within between life and death did he saw the past human emperors gain flesh and blood. This was the sight Qin Mu saw when he used the divine eyes Blind had imparted to him. His sight was completely different from the sight the ghosts in Fengdu saw. In the living realm, life and death were reversed. The patriarch, the past human emperors, and the past cult masters were still dead. Qin Mu didn't say all of this. He was silent for a moment before smiling. Patriarch, you, imperial preceptor, and the emperor are in charge of the reform. Now that you're here, how will the reform continue on? The young patriarch walked side by side with him to prevent the dragon Qin from coming up again. He smiled and said, The path of the reform has already started and it won't end. What imperial preceptor is reforming are the traditions, the slave nature, the fights between sects, so that the divine arts practitioners in the world need not fight for the sects anymore and exhaust their own power for nothing. It is also to change the individual mindset of the sects, to let divine arts practitioners work for the people and serve them. This is the great idea and the great framework. He came to the back garden of Hall of Wen Yuan and handed a pair of shears to Qin Mu. He also took one for himself and trimmed the sprays carefully. The most important thing about the reform is that it changes the bad habits in the hearts of people, pushing down the God statues within them. Destroying gods in people's hearts is not something divine arts practitioners have to do, but something the whole world has to do. If everyone could destroy the God and Buddha in their hearts, this would become a world of prosperity. Qin Mu trimmed the sprays and turned a blossom into a hen dragon without feathers. When the young patriarch finished speaking, he stopped and pondered his words before nodding. The people of the world pray to the gods and Buddhas for wind, rain, and a bountiful harvest, for their family to prosper and have lots of children. If the divine arts practitioners could fulfill their wishes, it could indeed assist in breaking the gods in their hearts. The young patriarch looked at the flowers and plants that were messily trimmed by him and shifted his gaze after a moment. I've said it to Imperial Preceptor before, that to break the gods in the hearts, he'll first need to reform the economy. It will improve the statecraft and aid the people. When the economy is open, the knowledge of the people will be opened. To put it in simple words, when divine arts practitioners will use their divine arts to help the farmers harvest their crops, the farmers will pay them, and with the money received, they'll buy food or resources they need for cultivation. This money would then return to the people's hands. They all have to pay taxes to the empire, so the empire would grow wealthy. When the empire is wealthy, it can open more traffic and irrigation works, which are all for the convenience and benefit of the people. Thus, when the empire is wealthy, people are wealthy. When people are wealthy, the resources are abundant. Divine arts practitioners will be able to buy all kinds of resources, and their cultivations would naturally far surpass the past. The people would become strong, and the empire would become strong. Qin Mu was enthralled, but he suddenly heard footsteps. When he turned back to look, he saw Cult Master Zhu Yang, Cult Master Yu Lian, Cult Master Sai Yuan Wei, and the rest entering Hall of Wen Yuan with murderous intent. Heavenly Devil Cult's past cult masters didn't make a move, but instead stopped and listened. Common folk has been slaves of influential families for too long, and they now have the nature of slaves. Once you kneel down, it's hard to get up. Imperial Preceptor is now making the people stand up, but this requires time. Still, the reform has been moving slowly. The people now no longer kneel to divine arts practitioners. The young patriarch's thoughts were full of the reform, and he didn't realize the arrival of guests. He reminisced about the past. I've seen the situation before the reform. At that time, the sects and cults stood in numbers, and the farmers slogged their lives out. They had to kneel and call them old masters, offering up meat and rations. To change this kind of slave nature, Imperial Preceptor and I used some 200 years. Once the people stand up, it's also very hard for them to kneel back down. Qin Mu remembered the incident where people knelt in front of the stone statues that had popped out from the earth. They still kneel to God statues. The young patriarch's expression grew a little weird. Imperial Preceptor said that it's easy to break the God in the temple, but it's hard to break the God in the heart. To me, it's not easy to break the God in the temple as well. I've done a small experiment once to test the heart of the people. I built a small temple outside the capital and enlightened a dirty mangy dog, then made it sit on the shrine. Can you guess what happened? He sighed and said, after a few days, the mangy dog's temple was flourishing with incense, and there were countless old men and old women coming forth to give offerings. The virtue box in front of the mangy dog was stuffed with money. If you put a toad on the shrine, not even a mangy dog, people would still stuff it with money and offer incense. Qin Mu laughed, but as he continued, he slowly couldn't laugh anymore. That's why we need to open the economy and wizen the people. Only then could we break the gods in the temples and the God in the hearts, the young patriarch said. And to wizen the people, we need you guys to continue with the reform to increase the number of divine arts practitioners. They need to become more common and become gods. When divine arts practitioners that become gods continue to serve the people will no longer pray to the gods in the temples. With the new wisdom, there will only be more divine arts practitioners. He then added, opening the economy, wisening the people is all part of the path of reform. What you guys are doing now is very good. Divine arts are being used for the people, but time is still required for the people gain wisdom and not kneel to the gods in the temples anymore. This journey is arduous, and it will first touch the benefits of the sects before touching the benefits of the high gods. High heavens are only the dogs of the high gods, so there is probably an even greater danger behind. He trimmed the sprays as he said, the reform of Imperial Preceptor has added 3 more forms to the sword skills and began the change of the paths and skills in the heaven and earth. You spreading the technique to become God by mending the divine bridge has pushed the reform another step ahead. Sai Yunxiang had offered incense and prayed to me, telling me that you and Princess Yushio founded the skill of awakening 6 directions primordial spirit. Numerous divine arts practitioners in Eternal Peace Empire had done their bit to help on the foundation and have by now created numerous techniques and divine arts. These are all great deeds. He straightened his back. With the paths, skills, and divine arts improving day after day, there will be more and more gods in Eternal Peace Empire. In time, the gods in the temples will be broken, and when that happens, we won't be far from breaking the gods in their hearts. Qin Mu's mind trembled, and he threw down the shears. He did a long bow to the ground. Patriarch is truly the sacred teacher of my heavenly saint cult. The young patriarch also hurriedly threw away his shears and helped him up with a smile. You are the cult master sacred teacher of our cult, so how could you call me sacred teacher? Quickly get up. At that moment, all the past cult masters in the surroundings bowed lowly to the ground and said in unison, Sacred teacher. The young patriarch only noticed them now and was at a loss. Sacred teacher is a saint who's a teacher. All the past cult masters aren't deserving to be called the sacred teacher. Only you are worthy of this title and worthy of the respect of all the past cult masters. The young patriarch was flustered, various emotions flooding his heart. He couldn't help the tears that flowed down his face. He had never been a cult master before and was always excluded outside the circle of power in Heavenly Saint cult. He had only carried the burden of Heavenly Saint cult when it was in trouble. That was why he had never even dreamed that he would be like Saint Woodcutter, receiving respect from all the past cult masters. The only one who was worthy of all the cult masters' respect was only Saint Woodcutter, who imparted his teachings on the rock. Now then, I know the aspiration and abilities of Wen Yuan far surpasses those of us, the cult masters. In the back garden of Hall of Wen Yuan, the previous cult masters all stood up and Sai Yuan Wei sighed ruefully. She suddenly remembered something and asked, why did I take you in as a disciple back then? I suddenly feel that my judgment was actually so good. The young patriarch blushed and said, when Master took me in as a disciple, you said I looked pretty and my aptitude was good. Of course, that important part was that I was pretty. Qin Mu examined his surroundings, and the people around him were all handsome men and pretty women. The past cult masters of Heavenly Devil cult, including the young patriarch, none of them looked angry at the words. Sai Yuan Wei blushed slightly while smiling. I remember now. I took you in as a disciple with a plan to use you to break my Tao heart with the affairs between man and woman. My great educational Heavenly Devil scripture mainly cultivated the heart, and I had broken my master's Tao heart, this way taking the position of the cult master. I needed a person who could break my Tao heart. Without destruction there can be no construction. If you could break my Tao heart, you would become the cult master. If you couldn't, I would be able to take another step forward and might just become a god or devil. However, since I kept putting my guard against you, Cult Master Yu Lian managed to take advantage of my inattention in regards to him and assassinated me. Cult Master Yu Lian sounded pleased with himself as he said, Master only guarded against your affection for little junior brother, but you didn't know it's hard to guard against an attack by a hidden enemy. How old was little junior brother then? You kept being concerned about it, but if you didn't have such thoughts and had guarded against me more, little junior brother might have become the sacred cult master. Qin Mu pondered over it. The devil in Heavenly Devil cult's name could probably be related to this continued tradition between masters and their disciples. This kind of style of master letting the disciple assassinate oneself couldn't not be called evil. It was like Li Qianxing. When he was assassinated by Granny Sai, she was only on celestial being realm, so she absolutely couldn't have used her true strength to kill Li Qianxing, who was already on divine bridge realm. Yet Li Qianxing had given her this chance. The fights between masters and disciples of Heavenly Devil cult should have originated from founding master whose motive was to make one generation stronger than the previous one, so he had established the rule that when a disciple defeated their master, they could become Heavenly Devil Cult Master. However, this kind of rule had gradually changed. With the strangeness of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures, it was easy to give birth to the devil nature. As a result, the rule that looked very good on paper had gradually changed to what it was now. The young patriarch smiled and said, "If I had become the sacred cult master, I would most likely have become like everyone, worrying about the benefits of Heavenly Saint cult and not the people of the world. Not being the cult master had instead made me whole." All the past cult master nodded in agreement. As for cult master Qin, Sai Yuanwei turned to look at Qin Mu and stood silent for a moment. "We won't argue about how your position of the cult master wasn't attained properly. After you've become the cult master, you've done well, but if it was us, we could have also done well." Qin Mu was humble. "This is natural. All the previous cult masters are dragons and phoenixes among humans, so if you were in my position, you would definitely do even better than me. It's just that when you guys were in my position, you guys did nothing." The faces of all the past cult master twitched, and their expressions flickered between dark and clear as they fought back the urge to get rid of him. The brat was fearless, but he was the sacred cult master too. He carried the important responsibility of passing down his position and the teachings on the rock, so if they got rid of him, Heavenly Devil cult would be finished. I was impolite just now, since I felt indignant that seniors are using wrong and outdated rules to limit the later generation, so I offended all of you. I hereby apologize to all the past cult masters, Qin Mu said. The expressions of the cult masters softened, and cult master Zhu Yan immediately helped him up with a smile. "Little cult master Qin has done what we didn't do, and that makes us admire you endlessly. Among the past cult masters, even if you can't rank in the top 3, you could still rank in the top 5. People say everything is empty after death, and we won't bear any grudge just because of a small quarrel." Cult Master Hu Jun smiled and said, "Other than admiring your attainments in cultivation, we are more worried that after you go back, you won't let the cult followers burn offering for us every new year and festive occasions." "You're right, extremely right." Everyone laughed and said, "We don't want to become like those poverty-stricken people from Hall of Human Emperor. They don't even have a person to burn offerings for them. The current human emperor of Hall of Human Emperor is really unfilial, not giving any offering every new year and on festive occasions. Look at how glorious the human emperors were when they were alive and look at how poor they are now. How are they like us, glorious when we are alive and glorious even after death?" Everyone laughed loudly, and the young patriarch also gave a few chuckles. But he then suddenly remembered Qin Mu and immediately glanced at him. Qin Mu also gave a few dry laughs. Luckily he had no face now, or he would have definitely blushed. The past cult masters of Heavenly Devil cult didn't know his other identity was the current human emperor and that the past human emperors were so poor because he didn't give any offerings. After returning to eternal peace, I must take a trip to Hall of Human Emperors and allow the past human emperors live wealthily. They can't be too poor. He set a new resolve in his heart. Cult Master Qin, the young patriarch said with a righteous expression. "You have come to meet me, so what are you going to do after returning to the world of the living?" Everyone's laugh stopped, and they all looked at him to see how he would answer. Qin Mu was solemn for a moment before smiling. "After returning to Eternal Peace Empire, I will first open roads." "Open roads?" The young patriarch frowned and said, "It's true that the traffic and roads make it convenient for the people to travel, but the cost is also great. Eternal Peace Empire has gone through numerous battles and the treasury is empty. You regard the lives of people as important, so why would you open the roads first? The roads of Eternal Peace Empire are already good, so if you open more now, won't it be a waste of manpower and resources?" Qin Mu sighed ruefully. "This is because I've just conquered West Earth." The young patriarch's heart trembled violently, and he cried out, "You led the army to invade West Earth. How big was the army you brought? West Earth is so huge, so how did you conquer it?" The hearts of the other cult masters also trembled violently as they found it unbelievable. "By myself, along with the dragon Chelin and Xiong Chia, I conquered West Earth." Qin Mu smiled lightly. "West Earth has already joined Eternal Peace, but the distance from it to Middle Earth is 100,000 miles. If the whip can't reach, the emperor can't control it, as they say. West Earth will know its place for a short period of time, but with the roads long and unpaved, as time goes on, West Earth will definitely grow chaotic, so what I want to do is to open traffic between West Earth and Middle Earth. The young patriarch and the past cult masters couldn't believe his words, and they held their foreheads while walking around. Suddenly, a previous cult master stopped and asked solemnly, West Earth and Middle Earth have a great ruins and a flaming desert between them. The closest distance is 10,000 miles. You want to open up a road that's 100,000 miles. Not one, my plan is 2 roads. 2 avenues that have to be incomparably flat for carriages and horses to pass at the greatest speed. The fastest rider should be able to cover those 10,000 miles on a strange beast in a day and night. Wrong, the cult master shouted out sternly. Do you have that much money? Does Eternal Peace Empire have that much money? Paving the roads needs money and divine arts, it takes human lives. Even though my sacred cult has heavenly works hall, but if you have them pave the road, then not only tons of money would be spent, many of our heavenly works hall's disciples would die of exhaustion. Qin Mu shook his head. No. When in West Earth, I've seen the roads there, and they are much more advanced than those of Eternal Peace. The divine arts of True Heaven Palace can be used to pave the road, and I have good relations with the influential families of West Earth, so I can ask True Heaven Palace Master to lead the divine arts practitioners of West Earth to pave the road. They can pave 1,000 miles in a day, so the road of 100,000 miles will only need 100 days. The cost won't be too high. The eyes of the previous cult master lit up, and he smiled. He then took a step back. The other cult masters were still circling around Qin Mu when Sai Yuanwei suddenly stopped. What about the flaming desert? It is tens of thousands of miles wide, and it's so dry that there's no water at all. If you open the roads and they get covered by sand, they will be completely useless. When that time comes, the people on the path will grow exhausted and distressed, and will die there. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor killed True Heaven Old Mother, the flaming desert went out, and only black tortoise bead is required to draw the water to irrigate the desert. Green dragon bead can be used to grow vegetation and turn the desert into a forest. The plains on the north have snow mountains which could be used for streams. I'll draw it from there and create lakes in the desert, solving the irrigation problem. Sai Yuanwei revealed a smile and also backed off. Another cult master then stopped to ask, the closest path is through great ruins. It is peaceful during the day, but when night comes, monsters and the darkness invade. How will you protect the traffic? I cannot ensure it, but I can shift stone statues and gather them to defend against the darkness. There will be a town every 1,000 miles, and a city every 10,000 miles. The cities and the towns will be between the 2 roads for travelers to have a place to rest their feet. With these cities and towns, goods will come to and fro between West Earth, Great Ruins, and Middle Earth. As a result, trade and commerce will definitely prosper. You still haven't explained how you'll solve the issue of money. Once the roads are open and the trade and commerce come and go, the money will naturally pour in. Great Ruins isn't a level road and there are many strange and bizarre incidents. How can you level the mountains and rivers? Cut into a mountain when meeting a mountain, build a bridge when meeting a river, and pay respect to a god when meeting a god. How wide is the avenue? 108 yards wide, 8 tracks for carriages and 4 tracks for soldiers. The width of the vehicles and horses' tracks in West Earth are different from those in Eternal Peace. How will you ensure smooth traffic on the tracks? In that case, make the track similar. The local conditions and customs of West Earth and Eternal Peace are different. What will you do? I'll make them the same then. The writings are different and the divine arts are different, so what will you do? In that case, spread the same writing system and open up education. Suddenly, the 28 past cult masters laughed in unison, and they bowed toward Qin Mu. Cult master can also be called a saint. You are worthy of the title of the sacred cult master. We tested you on behalf of cult master Li, and you've passed. Qin Mu returned their greeting and said sincerely, much thanks to all the cult masters for asking me questions and enlightening me. After returning to the world of the living, I will have the way to carry out the reform. If the reform succeeds to some extent and turns the heavenly moat into thoroughfare, all of you will have the most important merit. Everyone laughed loudly and stood up. The young patriarch was also happy for them. Qin Mu had had a falling out with the past cult masters at first, but now all the grudges were wiped away. And he was glad for it. Suddenly, bird-headed God Kai Xiu's voice reached them. Cult Master Qin, King Yama wants to punish you personally. Won't you come out? King Yama wants to punish you? What have you done? In Hall of Wen Yuan, the past cult masters all frowned greatly, and Cult Master Zhu Yang asked, "Is the thing you did big or small? If it's big, why don't we revolt?" The other cult masters were instantly excited and started to plan on how to revolt and rouse the other dead people in Fengju. They even thought of a few slogans for the revolt. Qin Mu hurriedly said, "It isn't a big matter. It's just a small matter, so there's no need to revolt. In the battle when we blocked off the gods of high heavens on God-broken mountain range, I seized the primordial spirits of a few people who died in battle from Fengju and revived them." The past cult masters became silent. After a moment, Cult Master Hu Jun slapped his thigh and said, "Where were we at? Right, the flags used for the revolt. I feel we should use flags of the martial god." Qin Mu smiled and said, "Just a small matter." Small matter? Seizing people from Fengju is a small matter. Numerous cult masters turned to look over at him with anger in their eyes and sneered. "Snatching people at the bridge of helplessness scared even us shitless. We thought you two had come to attack us. This is definitely not a small matter, and King Yama is going to behead you. If it was a small matter, we would ignore it and let King Yama take you, so he can give you 2 slaps on your buttocks before releasing you. But this is a huge matter which endangered the whole of Fengju, so revolt is the only way out now." Sai Yuanwei said. Outside the hall, God Kai Xiu's voice rang out once more, a little more impatient now. "Cult Master Qin, if you don't come out, I'm going in." The young patriarch suddenly said, "Cult Master Qin, why did King Yama didn't punish you directly and let you roam around the city freely? If your crime is really severe, shouldn't you be guarded tightly in the prison?" When he asked this, everyone came to a sudden realization: Qin Mu didn't look like a prisoner was supposed to look. Instead, he could still visit his friends and family in Fengju and even give them a beating. Before King Yama punished you, who else did he see? Qin Mu nodded. He dealt with Xing'an and Shaman God Kuei. Xing'an was released by him, and Shaman God Kuei was to be studied by numerous ghost kings because of his Yudu spells. King Yama also wanted to study the divine arts of Shaman God Kuei, so he let me out first. In that case, the thing you have done is small. The young patriarch smiled. I know that what Xing'an is big, but King Yama still released him. Shaman God Kuei is a god of Yudu, so the things he did should be even worse. Since they were punished first, this means that their crimes were above yours. Your crime is much smaller than theirs. Follow God Kai Xiu. King Yama won't give you trouble. Numerous cult masters nodded and said, "Just go. If King Yama wants to kill you, we'll go seize the execution grounds and the passage to reincarnation." Qin Mu relaxed and walked out of Hall of Wen Yuan. God Kai Xiu stood on the head of a stone lion pruning his feathers. When he saw him coming out, he pulled out his beak from his feathers and said, "Follow me." Qin Mu went over while asking, "Senior Kai Xiu, King Yama is summoning me." "Don't talk, you have the smell of a living person," Kai Xiu said. "I hate people that still have breath. If you breathe your last, your words will be much more pleasant. Also, King Yama is not summoning you, he wants to interrogate you." They came to Hall of King Qin, and Qin Mu looked at the front of the hall. There was a pile of flesh fighting and struggling, as Xing'an still couldn't give up the corporeal body parts of other people. It was evident that he was reluctant to give up his own path. Even a wise man like Xing'an finds it hard to give up the benefits he had attained. As a result, he's blinded by greed. He couldn't help shaking his head. By being indecisive, Xing'an was delaying his life, but it was no surprise. He had been collecting other people's body parts diligently his whole life to take them for his own. Making him give them up now was to make him give up his path and deny his entire life. It was indeed hard to accept it. The greater the achievements and the willpower of a person were, the harder it was for them to change themselves and their understanding. It was hard to admit one's own mistake. The sky is turning bright. Suddenly, mournful shouts came from Fengdu City, and Qin Mu hurriedly took a look at the source of them. He saw huge beasts lying on roofs of the halls and looking up at the sky while shouting, "All homes and all cities, be careful! The sky is turning bright!" In Fengdu City, the roaming souls filled the sky as they scrambled in all directions. On the land, numerous awe-inspiring gods and devils were running left and right, trying to find places to hide. Qin Mu was slightly stunned and asked, "God Kai Xiao, what happens when the sky is bright?" God Kai Xiao was unconcerned. "The sun is coming out. They have to hide or else the fire of pure yang from the sky will burn them. This sun is different from the one you see outside." Qin Mu was bewildered. Suddenly, the darkness withdrew rapidly and the foggy Fengdu became incomparably bright. It was his first time seeing the city in the day, and he saw the streets that were bustling with gods and devils suddenly become cold and cheerless. All of the inhabitants had shut their doors, and the roaming souls had delved into the abyss. The huge beasts on the halls had all hid inside, and the entire Fengdu had become quiet instantly. Next, white light became red as an incomparably huge sun blazing with flames rose in the horizon. In an instant, flames came from the east, surging over like the flowing sea that flooded the sky and covered the earth. All the streets were filled, and all the palaces and houses were drowned out. The blazing fire of pure yang swallowed up the cities of Fengdu, the blazing heat almost warping the space. This video will end here.